It is time now for the week that was, when we take a look at the top stories that made headlines around the globe this week. And we'll start with the hashtag End Bad Governance protest, which is now in the past after almost 10 days of sometimes very intensive outpouring of citizen anger at the perceived failure of President Bola Tinubu and his team to solve extreme hunger and economic sabotage in the land. On day 5 of those protests, the protesters demanded the resignation of Inspector General of Police Kayode Egbetokun over the killing of some of their colleagues across several states of the Federation. Those who converged on the Gani Fahimi Freedom Park here in Lagos were forcibly dispersed by some unwanted elements who were against the protest. Tokunbo Oyetuji has the details.
Feeling the vibes and ambience of the action, the Lagos hashtag End Bad Governance protesters in action on Monday. It is the day after their gathering was attacked by hoodlums, forcing an abrupt end. But rather than discouraging, it will seem their passion for the rally became more inflamed.
The commander of the armed forces, is that not what he's called? Who named him the commander of the youth? Who named President Tinubu the commander of Nigeria's youth? So what right has he? What power has he to then tell us that as soon as he has spoken, we have no right to gather again? And I remember something.
With Sunday's development, many believed the protest might have seen its end, especially with these pronouncements.
The organizers have decided to call it off. That the president has spoken, and they are looking forward to the president's meeting the demands they have represented before him.
Thank you very much.
So, in view of that, there will be no more gathering here or anywhere. Any of such gathering is unlawful and illegal, and if such gathering exists, we are going to apply the full weight of the law.
Perhaps the reason why the Gani Fahimi Park was initially locked on Monday until the police commissioner himself arrived and directed otherwise. That cleared the coast for the rally to begin in earnest, with a call for a minute's silence for some of their fellow protesters killed in other parts of the country.
Can you hear? Nigerians are dying.
A congress where they analyzed the president's broadcast to the nation.
President Tinubu's broadcast, first and foremost, is a sign that this our movement, whether they like it or not, they can no more ignore us. And I think that we must recognize that even though that broadcast did not address any of our demands, the mere fact that the president himself was forced to recognize the fact that Nigerian youth are protesting. When a few days ago, they were saying that we had no right to protest, we were thugs, we were miscreants, we were misconduct, we would be killed, we would not be allowed to go out. The mere fact that he spent 10 minutes trying to talk to us is a sign that whether they like it or not, they can no more ignore this.
And a couple of demands, including a call for the resignation of the Inspector General of Police.
The demand that we newly added, and it's the demand for the sack of the Inspector General of Police, Kayode Egbetokun, and who at any rate has been stylishly has been lobbying to illegally extend a stay in office, because other things being equal, Egbetokun should be retiring. But beyond that, we are demanding a sack and holding him accountable for the lives that have been lost over the past 5 days since the protests have commenced.
gbogbo nǹkan tí wọ́n kí ló dé tábà gbowó oṣù kí kálọ̀ máa rà kó tó wọ́n sílẹ̀ ní tábà gbowó sálárì kí kó tó wọ́n ní kálọ̀ máa rà jẹ́ ní.
Rescue me from poverty, this protester cried out to President Bola Tinubu. With means of livelihood severely threatened, the protest gave him the only opportunity to fully express his plight, he claimed. Going on his knees, he begged for some policy tweak that could at least improve his situation and that of many others like him. Tokunbo Oyetunji, Arise News, Lagos.
All right, so it's day 10 of the 10-day protest, and we're being told that there will be a 1 million man march today all over the country. I think unlike at the beginning of the protest, I think there are a couple of civil society organizations that actually put out some press releases about this 1 million man march. I'm not so sure what to make of that call for people, to come out on a Saturday, given what was experienced in many parts of the country last Saturday, which was day 3 of the protest, which was very quiet in many of the states, particularly in the southwest and in a number of the other southern states, except for the north. What have we learned? The president has spoken. No concession is the verdict from the people. Even though what the president is saying is that I have actually protested, on your behalf, to make sure that, dividends of democracy, as people used to say in the past, comes to you. But it looks like after 10 days, this is not Bangladesh. This possibly may not be, NSAS. But of course, close to 20 people dead. And now the protesters are calling for the resignation of the Inspector General of Police. What are your thoughts?
I mean, definitely, when you think about it, like you said, it's not the same thing as NSAS, but when you start with, certain demands, and then as time goes on, you're like, oh, okay, we don't want this anymore. Now we want this. We don't want this anymore. It doesn't make the protesters look like they have all their ducks in a row. I think when we look at the initial demands that were put forward, that should be the focus of the protest. I understand, that the protesters are upset, even just, I think it was on this same day 5, they had done like a candlelight kind of like remembrance service for, those that had lost their lives here in the south and even in the north. And the president has addressed the nation. He addressed the nation last week, Sunday, and he has spoken to the Nigerian people and said, you have to put an end to this protest. We are doing everything that we possibly can to make sure that your demands are met. It feels like we're at an impasse. My thing now is if we're looking at the numbers from when it started on August 1st to today, where we're expecting that 1 million man march, really and truly, when we think about the vim that this protest has, it seems to be losing a lot of steam. But what I would appeal to the protesters and to these civil groups and to Nigerians and even the media as a whole is to start to look at how this item points that have been placed out, how we can actually start to focus on that. A huge, we're going to probably talk about it soon when we look at the next story on the week that was when we saw the Minister of Information, of course, coming down to the Arise News Global Headquarters to start to communicate, to start to have dialogue. Protesting is fine, it's your right, but after the protest, once the protest season is over, what next? Let us start to have that conversation so that it doesn't just end in bloodshed, sweat and tears.
Yeah.
Yes. I believe that the protesters came out to say we're hungry. I don't think Nigerians are any less hungry today than they were before we started the protest. They said end bad governance. They said the government is bloated. I don't believe that the president made any concession, like you said earlier. He did not speak to the demands of the protesters when he gave his speech. He just spoke in line with his communication this whole time, which is we're trying, times are hard, we did what we had to before subsidy. So it's very disheartening to say the least. But as you said, let's move on to our next story, because in the meantime, the Minister of Information, Mohammed Idris, on Thursday, led the federal government communications team to the global headquarters of Arise News here in Lagos. The minister seized the opportunity offered by the visit to speak about some key policies of the Tinubu administration. The team was received by the management of the Arise News organization, led by the chairman and editor-in-chief of Arise This Day Media Group, Prince Nduka Obiagbena. It was a key engagement on how effective communication can help to address the socio-economic tension in the country. Again, Arise correspondent Tokumbo Oyetunji has the details.
We present to you the Nigerian flag.
The last act of the meeting, but a very crucial one indeed. The presentation of the Nigerian flag to the chairman and editor-in-chief of the Arise This Day Media Group by Minister Idris.
And we must strive to keep.
Crucial because the whole engagement of the day is centered on keeping Nigeria intact no matter the challenges. And the last few days and months have been more than challenging for Africa's biggest economy. Fuel subsidy removal, currency unification, and the attendant socioeconomic hardship. Mr. Idris explains them all.
Two major policies. One, the removal of fuel subsidy, which happened on day one of his administration. And then a few months after, the unification of our foreign exchange. These two policies have extremely huge bearing on the trajectory of Nigeria's economy and its well-being. Instead of our currency now being a means of exchange, it now became a commodity itself for people to trade in and just make money easily. There is no way that any economy could grow following that trajectory. If you look at the accruals to the state governor between January and May 29, and then January and May 29 of this year, you see a huge difference. So has that impacted on the lives of our people? If people are asking, what has the federal government done with their money? Which is a very legitimate question to ask. People should also ask what the state governors are also doing with theirs.
The nationwide protest against hunger and hardship has been a major consequence of some of the policies of the government that he represents. The momentum seems to have gone down at this time, but its echoes are as loud in this meeting room.
Especially with regards to food prices, which is really the major issue. Recall that in the last 10 years, most of our farms in this country have been deserted because of banditry and other forms of criminality. People have been driven away from their farms. Real investment was not really going down in the agricultural sector. So when the president came, he also ensured that so much investment going to agriculture. There's no democracy that will not support protest. But there's no democracy that will also support violence. While we have seen protests that may have started with very good intention, and for which our security agencies, by the way, responded to. I think the security agencies were in their best, especially if you look at the early part of the day that the demonstrations or the protests began. And I mentioned when I said the president was already protesting on your behalf. He was putting in place all those things that will make life better for all of us.
No hard feelings, only words of observation and key recommendations that are necessary to drastically check the social tension in the land.
We believe and agree that subsidy must be removed. We believe and agree that there should be a market-driven exchange rate, but not at the same time. The strategic error was remove the subsidy and exchange at the same time. You needed a stable exchange rate to modulate the subsidy, because the subsidy responds to market prices. So had you even sequenced it, had you now told all this IMF and co, who say they support your reform, we've removed subsidy, we've cut waste. Now we need the ammunition to have exchange rate management. But we did the exchange rate without ammunition. Yes, the government needs more time. A key issue is local governments. Why do we have insecurity? Could be failure of local government. So restoring local government is a key point, but it will take time to rebuild. So people say you are not communicating. You are communicating, you are here. But the communication you are not doing is communication by example. Look at National Assembly. The way they live, the way they conduct themselves does not show that we are in trouble. All this student loan, they are okay. But the key issue is how are we taking care of the poorest of the poor? So if we want social cohesion, we have to do something about poverty in the north.
More interactions and some harmonization.
What this government needs is more than public relations. The deficit really is in terms of policy articulation. There is no policy articulation taking place.
Every country has its own unique identity, and they create institutions to promote it. So we are coming up with 7 concrete institutions of nurturing, so that wherever you go as a citizen, you encounter these institutions that tell you what the values are. And our children are brought up as model citizens who understand what the values are.
An ecclesia of the session with one key agreement that there should be no we against them moving forward, but a new mindset of we all for a greater Nigeria that works for everyone. Tokunbo Oyetunji, Arise News, Lagos.
I saw you there this year with that sneaky handshake towards the end. You were in attendance, and I mean, there's a lot that has come out from that. And I think maybe to just start, I think it's very commendable to see the federal government, via the Ministry of Information, actually spending time and coming down and having that dialogue, that communication with the media, because there's this, I don't know where it came from, but it's almost as if the federal government and the media are at opposing sides, but that should not be the fact. And just to kind of go into, what Prince Ndukal Baigbena said, the editor-in-chief at this day, and of course, chairman here at Arise Media Group, really those 2 decisions, and that has been the bane of the existence of this current protest, which is these 2 decisions to float the currency as well as announce the subsidy at the same time, with what seems like the subsidy removal at the same time, without much focus on how it was going to affect the people, or at least putting a plan on ground or allowing it happen in a way that it's in phases, so that the feeling, or people kind of just getting overwhelmed by increase in food, increase in transportation, increase in almost every part of their life being felt almost like from a 0 to 100 effect. And to just further go on that, there was something that the president said in his speech last week, where he almost pointed the fingers towards the state government and the local government. Now, we know that with the financial autonomy that the local government now has, they are able to, be the ones to decide how to spend the revenue.
Hopefully. But one thing the president did do, which I think was a bit misleading in that statement, is talking about the $570 million disbursement to state government, state governors.
The governors are responding
and
already.
The governors are responding.
Making useful clarifications.
Yes, because, it's very important that we do not talk about loans from the World Bank as though you're dashing money.
You dash us money.
As you dash us money, especially when it's a COVID loan, a 2020 loan, because of the COVID-19 response. And this is actually the point of this whole thing, is that even when you do communicate, sometimes you are misleading. We do need to be able to trust what is coming from our presidency. And that's what
excuse the governors.
It should not excuse. However, when there is a trust deficit in society, the presidency, his comms team, the Minister of Information, and NOA need to be very, very very intentional when it comes to what they communicate to the public. There is no reason why people should run to go and fact check, or why people within your own team will be fact checking each other in public. It is disheartening to bring down the institution in that manner. And another thing is something that Mr. KK very kindly said is that what is missing is policy articulation. If you feel that, and I mentioned this as well, if you feel that the CNG initiative is not being as successful as it should be because not a lot of people know about it or they don't understand it, if you feel that certain policies are not popular, it's because there is a lack of policy articulation. There's a lack of actual intelligence discourse. There's a lack of actually dealing with Nigerians as though we are people, as though the people have sense, you know, rather than talking to Nigerians as though they're your subjects or their children. There needs to be a lot of articulation, and there needs to be more of this. Yes, the media is not the enemy. However, you're also not the friend.
Absolutely. I have a few, quick thoughts on that visit, because it was such an important visit, and I like the way that you both have, commended it. I think that it exposed the Honourable Minister as a thoroughbred professional. He has done something that is very, very uniquely positive for the Asiwaju, government. And he didn't just come with the team from the Ministry of Information. He also came from the media team. He also came with the media team of the president. Those who are important, those who are key. If you were part of the media team of the president and you were not at that, meeting in Lagos with the Arise This Day team, I think that you will have to ask yourself, why you are not there. And so it is commendable, given what transpired during the elections, before and after the elections, and when they thought that the media was the enemy. But clearly, I like the fact that the Honourable Minister, is doing very well. I do not think that he should stop with Arise, though. I think that he should, move around and communicate effectively. And of course, that now takes me to what the chairman of Arise This Day Media Group said, which is, again, very remarkable. Particularly if you study the pattern that he has taken, I believe, in the last 1 year, especially starting with the meeting of the media executives in Africa that happened in Kenya the other day. And then last week, about 2 weeks ago, in Lagos at the Jakonde Memorial Lecture by the Nigerian Guild of Editors, where was the keynote speaker speaking about, how the media can survive in an age like this. And then to Thursday, when he now received the Honourable Minister, I think Prince Nduka Obagbena is now positioning himself as some kind of voice that must be listened to. And I think that he spoke truth, to power when he said that you are communicating as minister, but the communication that you're not doing, at least effectively yet, is communicating by example. And I think that they should run away with that important submission by Prince Obagbena, because it wasn't meant only for the House, the National Assembly, who appear to be living large, who are always getting additional money, who are always traveling, and who sometimes are very careless, with what they say. I think the import of what he said is also meant for the executive, starting, by the way, from the president. Why should somebody say it during the protest? You cannot be enjoying at our expense. And when we see you living large, it shows that you do not seem to realize that things are tough and that we are in trouble. And it communicates badly. It communicates what Professor Niyi Oshundare, who said that in The Man That Walked Away, the Bamu Bamu Layo. I think I've mentioned it on this program before. The Bamu Bamu Layo syndrome, which is, where we're well fed and satisfied, but we don't know. We probably do not care if others are struggling to eat. And therefore, you cannot be seen to be communicating that, because everybody, is in this together. And so the people always talk about the two important reforms, the removal of subsidy and then the arbitrage that was, unifying the exchange rate. What about the electricity tariffs that you increase? If you put all those three together, then maybe you can begin to appreciate why people are angry and a number of people are hungry. Those are the things that we need to look at, and listen to the yearnings of the people and to what Prince Obagbena said. All right, we'll proceed the U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris and her running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, attracted thousands of supporters to a campaign rally in Arizona as the new Democratic ticket continued their tour of battleground states. Harris paused during the rally at Glendale's Desert Diamond Arena to directly address Gaza protesters who interrupted her remarks.
To all the local elected officials, thank you, but the most important thank you to each and every one of you. Look, you took time out of your busy lives. You found babysitters, you took time off work, you walked for miles in. Look, I'm a Minnesotan, I'm like a damn snowman, I'm melting here. We walk on water half the year in Minnesota, it's so damn cold, but not you, you came. And you came into this space with neighbors.
All right. Interesting development. I know why you're laughing. Interesting development in the U.S. A lot of people thought that Josh Shapiro would be the peak, but it wasn't Josh Shapiro. It's now, Governor Walz, who's now firing, from all cylinders. And it looks like maybe Kamala Harris got this right in picking this Minnesota governor.
I think one of the reasons Kamala has gotten this right is because of Trump's Mar-a-Lago, podium performance. You can call it recently. The polls are swinging. I would say that I have not seen Democrats have this much energy in a very, very long time. We now see that in battleground states.
Is the Kamala Harris honeymoon?
I do.
For now.
I do, but however, Walz has boosted her in the polls too. Right? You have swing states that are now in play. Yeah. You have states that were no-go, like Georgia and North Carolina, which are now toss-ups. You have also, very, very importantly, J.D. Vance, Trump's vice presidential pick, in the negatives. His approval rating amongst independents and Democrats is negative 57 in the balance. That is
another Sarah Palin in the making.
And so for me, I think it's exceptionally well done to pick Walz, who is a veteran, a hunter, a gun owner,
a coach.
A coach. Calling him Coach Tim made my heart swell. A father. He was called the best shot on Capitol Hill. Most of his bills were bipartisan. So it's somebody who's been a congressman, a governor, honestly, and all around. He looked like he was baked for this moment. He was preparing for a moment like this, and this is what happens when opportunity meets.
I like the fact that Trump says that I'm now ready for a debate, and not one, not two, but three in September, which of course Kamala Harris says welcome, and we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, definitely. I couldn't agree more with the two of you. I was looking at just kind of like a few banter online, and they were saying that Nigerians have been calling the poor man Walz as opposed to Walz. I've seen a lot of his speeches. He seems really a very formidable partner. He really seems like he's the perfect person that Kamala needed for this. And I cannot wait for September 10. We're going to be tuned in and locked in to see that debate between Kamala and Donald Trump.
Definitely. Well, it seems that's all there is on the week that was. But as we move on, let's take a minute or two to bring you up-to-date stories with a couple of the stories making rounds. And we'll start with Trump in Montana, where the Republican presidential candidate, Donald Trump, held a rally in Bozeman, Montana last night, where he criticized his Democratic rival and Vice President Kamala Harris for calling him and J.D. Vance weird. Trump said he is the best man to make America great again and will, among other things, put an end to the Russia-Ukraine war.
But we went around the state, and it was so beautiful, and I'd say, when will I be there? Approximately 2.5 hours. Oh, great. Thank you. It's a big state, it's a beautiful state, and we love it, and we've won it every time by a lot. So I'm thrilled to be back in this incredible place, this beautiful state with thousands of proud, hardworking American patriots, which is what you are. You built the country. Less than 3 months from now, we are going to defeat radical left Democrat Jon Tester. He's terrible. He is terrible. He is terrible. And send Tim Sheehy to the United States Senate. We're going to evict crazy Kamala. Do you ever hear of Kamala? Radical left. Radical left.
Well, she has a couple of things that a lot of people from Montana would like she wants to take away your guns. You like that, right? All right.
A plane carrying 61 people that was being operated by the Brazilian airline Vopa has crashed in the country's Sao Paulo state. The aircraft involved in the fiery wreck in a residential area in the city of Vinhedo was carrying 58 passengers and 4 crew members. Firefighters, military police, and the Civil Defense Authority all dispatched teams to the crash site. Brazil's president observed a minute of silence for victims of the plane crash.
I have to be the bearer of some very bad news. I would like everyone to stand for a minute of silence because a plane has just crashed in the city of Vinhedo in Sao Paulo. There were 58 passengers and 4 crew members, and it seems that all of them died. I would like to ask for a minute of silence for the victims.
All right, that's all on stories making the rounds.